Ethan Walker's day had been an endless cascade of challenges. A whirlwind of high-stakes presentations, decisive investor meetings, and the relentless pursuit of an eco-friendly housing project that would redefine urban living. At 5:42 p.m., as the digital clock on his car's dashboard blinked its final minute in the underground parking garage of his sleek office tower, he left with a heavy heart and a mind already burdened by the day's wait. Yet nothing could have prepared him for the extraordinary encounter that awaited him on the busy city sidewalk. Amidst the autumn traffic, golden leaves swirling in the cool breeze, hurried executives clutching their phones and students hefting oversized backpacks, a most unusual sight stopped him in his tracks. There, in the midst of a relentless stream of indifferent passers-by, stood two little figures. Identical twin girls, no more than 5 years old, standing as silent sentinels. Their blue dresses, though worn, were impeccably maintained. Small patches of careful mending testified to a care that transcended their apparent destitution. Their brown hair, styled into matching ponytails with faded blue ribbons, danced softly in the wind. Yet it was not their appearance that seized Ethan's attention. It was the deep, fearful intensity in their large, dark eyes, and the way they clutched each other's hands as though united against a world of uncertainty. As the twins raised their small arms in unison to point at something in the distance, Ethan followed their unyielding gaze. Between the gleaming modern buildings and vibrant billboards, an old, dilapidated structure emerged against a slowly darkening sky. A forsaken Ferris wheel, its silhouette a haunting remnant of better times, part of an abandoned amusement park now rechristened in his mind as the Enchanted Realm. With the traffic light shifting from red to green and impatient horns blaring behind him, Ethan's pulse quickened. There was something profoundly disturbing in the girls' blank stares and their unspoken plea, something that stirred long-forgotten memories of his own lonely childhood when he waited at the school gate for his mother Helen, who labored tirelessly at 3 jobs to ensure his education. Without a second thought, Ethan signaled to pull over and parked a few yards away. He turned off the engine and, with his heart pounding in his chest, observed the twins through the rear-view mirror. As the descending sun cast long, trembling shadows on the pavement, he noted every detail: the carefully ironed, albeit worn, dresses, the once white sneakers now tinged with yellow, and the frailty of their small, trembling forms. Gathering his courage, he stepped out into the cacophony of distant honks and fragmented conversations, the urban soundtrack of his city enveloping him. "Hello?" he called softly, maintaining a respectful distance. "Are you okay? Are you waiting for someone?" In perfect unison, the twins turned their heads toward him, their deep brown eyes filled with a mixture of silent terror and fragile hope. But instead of answering, they resumed pointing, their small fingers trembling as they directed his gaze back toward the forlorn park. A sudden gust of wind whipped past, causing the blue dresses to flutter and momentarily reveal bruised knees adorned with colorful band-aids, a visible reminder of the physical toll their hardship had taken. Ethan crouched down to meet their eyes, his voice gentle yet laced with urgency. "My name is Ethan. Can I help you find your parents?" The twin on the right, distinguished by a delicate star-shaped patch on her dress pocket, tightened her grip on her sister's hand. Tears welled in both of their eyes, though they remained silent, their unspoken message clear. They were too afraid to speak. As the sun dipped lower and city lights began to flicker on, Ethan noticed the cold seeping into the girls' bones. Shivering in their thin garments, they appeared even more fragile under the descending night. Acting without hesitation, he removed his own jacket and draped it over them. The gesture, simple yet profoundly compassionate, was accepted without words. Observing the indifferent flow of pedestrians, most oblivious to this silent drama, Ethan felt an overwhelming need to act. In the distance, the rusted, abandoned Ferris wheel stood like a twisted monument to forgotten joys, its skeletal frame reaching out toward the emerging stars. A distant rumble of thunder punctuated the moment, as Ethan, his instincts sharpened by years of business acumen and tempered by the echoes of his own childhood loneliness, made a fateful decision. "Do you want to show me something over there?" he asked, pointing toward the enigmatic park. For the first time, a flicker of something like relief mingled with fear in the twins' eyes, and silent tears traced down their pale cheeks. In that fragile moment, Ethan realized that his rational mind urged him to call the authorities, yet his own recollections of vulnerability, and the unyielding hope that had always been his refuge propelled him to trust his heart instead. With the rain beginning to patter softly, creating ripples and puddles that mirrored the city's kaleidoscopic lights, Ethan glanced once more at the tiny figures in his rearview mirror. They looked smaller, more delicate, and somehow even more determined as they continued to point silently toward the park. Ignoring the chaos of the city around him, he took a deep breath and said, "All right, let's go see what you want to show me." In that instant, the twins' faces broke into identical, hopeful smiles, as if, after days of waiting in silence, they had finally found someone who could understand their plight. Thus began their journey into the enchanted realm, a place where the past's decay merged with the potential for renewal. The rain fell steadily as Ethan led the way toward the abandoned amusement park, its rusty chains and crumbling structures evoking memories of a long-lost wonderland. The park's main entrance, an archway with large metal letters barely clinging to form a faded paradise, loomed before them. As they approached, Ethan could feel the tension in the twins ease ever so slightly, replaced by an unspoken trust that perhaps here, in this place of forgotten dreams, lay the key to healing their battered hearts. The park was eerily silent, its only sounds the creaks of aging metal and the soft rustle of overgrown vegetation. The deserted Ferris wheel, its cabins empty and swaying gently in the wind, stood as a silent witness to the passage of time. And yet, as Ethan followed the twins along a narrow, trampled path, he sensed that within this desolation was the seed of a new beginning, one that would change his life forever. In that moment, as the wind carried the promise of rain and the fading light cast surreal patterns on the pavement, Ethan realized that sometimes the greatest acts of love begin with a single, courageous decision. His mother's words echoed softly in his mind, merging with the muted heartbeat of the city, a reminder that love, once kindled, can illuminate even the darkest corners of life. Under the fading glow of an autumn dusk, Ethan Walker's car glided slowly along a busy city street. He had just left the underground parking garage of his sleek office tower at precisely after a day brimming with high-stakes presentations and a decisive meeting with investors for his revolutionary, eco-friendly residential complex. As he navigated the congested avenues, where golden leaves swirled on the sidewalks and a cool breeze whispered promises of the approaching evening, Ethan's eyes were suddenly drawn to an extraordinary sight amid the urban rush. In the midst of hurried executives, overburdened students, and street vendors hustling to make their sales, two small figures stood like silent statues. They were twin girls, no more than 5 years old, dressed in blue garments that, although worn, were impeccably maintained, their little clothes marked with careful mending. Their matching brown hair, tied neatly in ponytails with faded blue ribbons, danced in the wind. "Halfway down," she said, taking her seat in front, yet it was not their appearance that captured Ethan's attention. It was the haunting depth in their large dark eyes, where fear and silent desperation intermingled. The twins, standing close together, with their tiny fingers interlaced as if to never let go, pointed in unison toward a distant landmark. Following their outstretched arms, Ethan's gaze landed on the crumbling outline of an abandoned amusement park. Set against the backdrop of modern skyscrapers and vibrant billboards, the dilapidated Ferris wheel stood as a forlorn relic, a once proud symbol now lost to time. For a few seconds, as the traffic light shifted and impatient horns blared behind him, Ethan absorbed the surreal scene. The twins, immobile and unblinking, directing his attention toward that desolate place with an intensity that spoke louder than words. In that moment, memories of his own childhood emerged. The long hours spent waiting for his mother, Helen, who toiled at 3 jobs to support his education. With these recollections fueling his determination, Ethan signaled his car to pull over a few yards away. He turned off the engine and, with a steadying breath, observed the girls through his rearview mirror. The lowering sun stretched long shadows across the pavement as he noted every detail. The dresses with tiny sewn patches, the once white sneakers now tinged with yellow, and the trembling posture of 2 vulnerable souls. Compelled to act, Ethan stepped out into the ambient clamor of the city, the distant honking, snippets of conversation, and the intermittent squeak of buses, each sound underscoring the isolation of these 2 children in a vast, indifferent world. "Hello?" he called softly, his tone gentle yet imbued with urgency. "Are you okay? Are you waiting for someone?" In unison, the twins turned their gaze toward him. Their eyes, deep and nearly black in the evening light, conveyed a mix of terror and hope. Without uttering a word, they resumed pointing toward the abandoned park, their silent appeal resonating deeply within him. A sudden gust of wind swept past, causing the blue dresses to flutter and momentarily reveal bruised knees adorned with colorful band-aids, a stark reminder of past hardships. Lowering himself to their level, Ethan said, "My name is Ethan. Can I help you find your parents?" At the mere mention of parents, the twin on the right, distinguished by a small star-shaped patch on her dress pocket, clutched her sister's hand even tighter, and silent tears began to form. Their muted distress struck a chord within Ethan, whose own childhood loneliness now intertwined with an overwhelming desire to protect them. As the sun dipped lower and city lights gradually flickered on, the cold air made the twins shiver in their thin garments. Moved by compassion, Ethan removed his jacket and gently draped it over their shoulders. The gesture, simple yet laden with warmth, was accepted without protest as the girls huddled closer. Observing the indifferent passers-by, those who offered only fleeting, curious glances, Ethan's resolve to help grew stronger. In the distance, the rusted remains of the Ferris wheel loomed like a twisted monument, its skeletal frame reaching toward the emerging stars, symbolizing both decay and the possibility of renewal. Driven by an inner urgency, Ethan asked, "Do you want to show me something over there?" as he pointed toward the silent park. For the first time, the twins' eyes flickered with a blend of relief and fear, and small tears glistened on their cheeks. In that critical moment, Ethan knew that his rational mind might urge him to call for help, yet the echo of his own childhood vulnerability and longing for protection compelled him to trust his heart instead. "All right," he whispered, "let's go see what you want to show me." In response, the twins' faces broke into identical, hopeful smiles, as though after endless hours of waiting in silence, they had finally found someone who truly cared. Under a steadily falling rain that began to blur the city's harsh edges into gentle ripples, Ethan led the way toward the abandoned amusement park, a place where forgotten dreams lay entangled with memories of past laughter. They passed a dilapidated funhouse hall of mirrors, where shattered glass lay scattered on the ground, glittering like dirty diamonds. Ahead, a derelict roller coaster loomed ominously, its twisted tracks carving impossible loops against a darkening sky like a dormant metal serpent. As they entered a more secluded area, Ethan's eyes caught sight of an old shooting gallery booth. Its faded awning, partly intact, hinted at recent habitation, revealing signs of a makeshift shelter. Neatly folded old blankets in a corner, clothes hung on improvised lines, and carefully stacked empty food wrappers intermingled with the stark presence of scattered, broken liquor bottles and marks of violent outbursts on the wooden walls. Amid the chaos, Ethan noticed tender details that spoke of the twins' presence. A makeshift vase holding wilted wildflowers, childish drawings taped to the wall with worn-out tape, and a tattered rag doll placed carefully on a wooden crate. Suddenly, a harsh voice shattered the fragile calm. "You two, in here! Where's my money?" The effect was immediate and devastating. The twins' small bodies began to shake violently as they instinctively moved closer to Ethan, seeking refuge behind him. For the first time, one of them let out a small, heart-wrenching whimper that broke his heart into 1,000 pieces. Unsteady footsteps and the clinking of empty bottles approached, accompanied by mumbling curses filled with drunken anger. "Where did you run off to, you worthless brats? I told you not to come back without any money." The voice drew nearer until, suddenly, a disheveled figure emerged. Dean. Staggering between two decrepit booths, his bloodshot eyes and aggressive posture made him appear larger than his medium height suggested. His dirty, rumpled clothes and the half-empty bottle in his hand spoke of a life spiraling out of control. His initial confusion melted into fury when he saw the twins partially hidden behind Ethan. "Who are you?" he growled, taking a step forward. "And what are you doing with my girls?" Before Ethan could respond, Dean shifted his focus to the twins, yelling, "You! I told you to get money. Where is it?" In a swift, cruel motion, he seized the arm of the girl on the right, the one marked by a star patch, yanking her violently. "Answer me when I talk to you." Tears streamed down Ethan's face as he witnessed the tiny girl being shaken like a rag doll, her sister clinging desperately to her free hand. "You're as useless as your mother," Dean spat, his face flushed with rage. "She died and left me with you, and you can't even bring in money." In that heart-wrenching moment, all the memories of his own childhood, the sacrifices made by his mother, the love she had always shown him, collided with the cruelty unfolding before his eyes. With a surge of determination, Ethan's voice came out low yet charged with authority. "Let her go, now." Though tears still streamed down his cheeks, his eyes burned with resolute defiance as he confronted Dean. "Who do you think you are to order me around?" Dean advanced, still clutching the girl, claiming, "These brats are my responsibility." "You can let her go right now," Ethan interrupted firmly, "or I will call the police, social services, and every authority available." Pulling out his phone, he kept his eyes fixed on Dean. In that tense moment, something in Ethan's unwavering tone broke through the alcoholic haze, and Dean released his grip. The girl immediately ran to Ethan, joining her sister. "They've got no one else," Dean mumbled bitterly, but Ethan replied, "You're not all they have, not anymore." In one smooth motion, Ethan scooped up both girls, their small bodies trembling yet light, as if the very act of survival had rendered them almost weightless. As they walked away from the crumbling park, the rain continued to pour, mingling with silent tears and newfound hope. Ethan whispered softly to the twins, "You'll never have to come back here, I promise." Their tight embrace spoke of a bond forged in shared pain and compassion, a promise of a new beginning in a world where love and kindness would triumph over neglect and cruelty. Ethan sat in the quiet solitude of his car, the rearview mirror reflecting the gentle, rhythmic breathing of the two twins as they slept peacefully. Their small hands remained intertwined, even in slumber, a tender testament to the bond that had carried them through unimaginable hardship. As he drove through the rain-kissed city streets, memories flooded his mind. The pain of losing their mother, the cruelty inflicted by a heartless stepfather, and the long, cold nights spent in that desolate, abandoned park. Those memories, bittersweet and raw, mingled with the present, creating a mosaic of struggle and hope. He recalled the early years after graduation, when his own life was only just beginning. In those uncertain days, his beloved mother, Helen, had finally eased her relentless work schedule to one modest cleaning job per day. Yet even then, she had not abandoned her passion for small sewing projects. Each delicate stitch a secret fund, a symbol of resilience and hope. Ethan's first major architectural triumph had been the unveiling of a sustainable residential complex, a project that had promised to reshape urban living with eco-friendly innovation. On that memorable day, Helen had been there in the audience, her eyes glistening with pride as she quietly cheered him on. Later, in the soft intimacy of a private moment, she had taken his hands into hers and whispered, "You have come so far, my son. But more importantly, you have never forgotten where you came from." Those words had become a beacon for him, guiding him through every challenge that life had hurled his way. Now, as he glanced at the sleeping twins in the back seat, Ethan felt a certainty grow in his heart, a promise to be for these fragile souls what his mother had always been for him. He thought, "It doesn't matter where you come from, but where you want to go." With that thought echoing in his mind, he picked up his phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. After just 2 rings, a familiar, comforting voice answered. "Son, is something wrong?" his mother asked softly. With his voice thick with emotion, Ethan replied, "I need your help. And I need you to make that special hot chocolate of yours. I'm bringing 2 very special people for you to meet." In the back seat, the twins continued to sleep, oblivious to the conversation that would soon shape their future. The rain had subsided, and the first stars began to twinkle in the vast night sky, serving as tiny beacons of hope that lit the path to a new beginning. Ethan soon parked his car at a brightly lit shopping center, a place whose warmth stood in stark contrast to the dark, stormy night they had left behind. The girls awoke from their brief nap, blinking in confusion as they encountered the dazzling brightness of the store. "We're going to buy some things for you," Ethan said gently as he peered through the rearview mirror, his tone both kind and reassuring. As they stepped into the spacious department store, the twins exchanged silent glances, a private conversation only they could share. A young sales assistant approached with a practiced smile, though it wavered momentarily upon noticing the worn state of their clothing. Still in his rumpled dress shirt after having generously given them his jacket, Ethan instructed, "We need complete outfits for both of you. Clothes, shoes, everything in your sizes." The twins, holding each other's hands tightly, began to explore the children's section with curious eyes that sparkled with a mix of wonder and the hope of a fresh start. Ethan watched as they gravitated toward a colorful rack of dresses. "You can choose whatever you like," he encouraged warmly. "How about we start with the dresses?" Lila, identifiable by the small, star-shaped patch on her old dress, tentatively reached out and lightly touched a pale pink dress, adorned with tiny, embroidered flowers. "Do you like this one?" he asked softly, and Lila nodded shyly. "And you, Mira?" he continued. Mira looked toward her sister for silent approval before pointing to a similar dress in light blue. Smiling, Ethan gathered both dresses, adding, "We'll need more than just one, won't we?" Over the next 40 minutes, Ethan and the compassionate sales assistant, who now fully grasped the gravity of the situation, helped the twins select a complete wardrobe. New dresses, pants, shirts, warm jackets for the approaching autumn, socks, underwear, and even soft pajamas, featuring playful unicorn prints. In the shoe section, Ethan ensured that they tried on several pairs until the perfect fit was found. When Mira slipped into a new pair of purple sandals, a delicate smile blossomed on her face. The first genuine smile Ethan had seen from her since he had rescued them. Their shopping expedition continued with delightful discoveries. In the toy section, Lila paused in front of a display of art supplies, a set of professional colored pencils reminiscent of one Ethan had once won in a childhood contest. "Do you like to draw?" he asked in a gentle tone. Lila nodded, whispering, "Mommy always gave us paper to draw on while she sewed." Noting Mira's keen interest in children's books, particularly one with beautiful illustrations of gardens and flowers, Ethan added several books to their growing basket. After paying for the new clothes, disregarding the substantial bill without a hint of hesitation, Ethan led the twins to the family restroom. With bags in hand, he waited patiently outside while the twins changed, assisted by the kind sales assistant who had offered her help. When they emerged, it was as if two entirely new girls had stepped into the light. Lila in her fresh pink dress and Mira in her vibrant blue one, each complemented by matching new shoes and neatly brushed hair. Their old dresses were carefully packed away, treasured relics of a past filled with both pain and love. Soon after, noticing that it was past 8 o'clock, Ethan remarked, "You must be hungry." He suggested a nearby Italian restaurant, a family-owned gem known for its red and white checkered tablecloths and the tantalizing aroma of tomato sauce and fresh herbs. At the restaurant, the hostess led them to a cozy corner table and provided 2 booster seats for the twins. An elderly waiter soon brought menus and even offered 2 coloring sets as a small courtesy to their young guests. "Do you like pasta?" Ethan asked, knowing from their eager glances that the answer was yes. He ordered spaghetti and meatballs for the 3 of them, grape juice for the twins, and water for himself. As they waited for the meal, the twins quietly colored at the table, their small hands still intertwined. A basket of fresh bread and butter was brought over, and Ethan gently encouraged them to take some. Their hungry eyes were full of silent gratitude as they began to eat slowly and politely, though it was evident that they had been deprived of proper meals for far too long. Ethan glanced at the rearview mirror, where the twins lay fast asleep, their little hands still intertwined as if holding on to hope itself. In that quiet moment, as the soft hum of the city faded into the background, his heart tightened with the weight of all they had endured. The loss of their mother, the cruelty of a heartless stepfather, and the harsh life in an abandoned park that had once been their only refuge. He recalled how, after graduation, his own life had been forged in the fires of struggle. His mother, Helen, had gradually eased her grueling work schedule to a single cleaning job, yet she still carved out moments to sew small projects, quiet acts of resilience that built an emergency fund. Her steady presence had shaped him, instilling in him the determination that now compelled him to help these 2 fragile souls. Driving through the city, Ethan's mind was awash with memories of his childhood. A small apartment with yellowish walls, a formica table cluttered with homework, and the comforting sound of his mother's voice when she returned home late from her multiple jobs. Every professional success, every milestone he had reached as a young architect designing sustainable residential complexes, was underpinned by the sacrifices of his humble beginnings. Now, with the twins sleeping soundly in the back seat, his resolve solidified. He would be their guardian, their beacon, just as his mother had been for him. After ensuring the twins were safe in his car, Ethan parked near a brightly lit shopping center. The contrast between the neon glow and the dark, rain-soaked night they had left behind struck him deeply. As the twins stirred awake, blinking at the sudden brightness, he reassured them softly, "We're going to get you some new clothes. Something nice." Their curious glances and silent, shared glances spoke volumes, and as they entered the department store, a young sales assistant offered a kind, if tentative smile upon noticing the state of their clothing. Ethan, still in his slightly rumpled dress shirt from the day's trials, explained calmly, "We need complete outfits for both of you. Clothes, shoes, everything in your sizes." The twins clung to each other as they wandered through the children's section. Their eyes sparkled with a mixture of wonder and cautious hope when they reached a colorful display of dresses. "You can pick whatever you like," Ethan encouraged, his voice gentle yet filled with compassion. Lila, marked by a small star patch on her worn dress, tentatively reached for a pale pink dress adorned with tiny embroidered flowers. "Do you like this one?" he asked softly, and she nodded with quiet approval. Mira, seeking her sister's silent consent, pointed to a similar light blue dress. With a warm smile, Ethan gathered both choices, adding, "We'll choose a few more to make sure you have everything you need." For the next 40 minutes, Ethan and the sales assistant, whose kindness shone through her professional demeanor, helped the twins select a complete wardrobe. New dresses, pants, shirts, and warm jackets for the coming autumn were carefully chosen, along with socks, underwear, and even soft pajamas decorated with whimsical unicorn prints. In the shoe section, Ethan ensured they tried on several pairs until they found the ones that fit perfectly. When Mira slipped on a pair of new purple sandals, a small smile lit up her face, the first genuine smile Ethan had seen from her since that fateful day on the sidewalk. Their shopping journey continued with gentle discoveries. In the toy section, Lila paused before a display of art supplies, a set of professional colored pencils reminiscent of one Ethan had once cherished as a child. "Do you like to draw?" he asked tenderly. Lila whispered in return, "Mommy always gave us paper to draw on while she sewed," and her voice was so soft it nearly blended with the ambient music of the store. Noticing Mira's interest in a brightly illustrated children's book about gardens and flowers, Ethan added a few books to their basket. After paying for the new clothes, disregarding the substantial bill with quiet resolve, Ethan led the twins to the family restroom. There, with the gentle assistance of the kind sales assistant, the twins changed into their new outfits. Emerging from the restroom, they looked transformed, a striking contrast to the fragile figures Ethan had found on that rainy day. Their old dresses, carefully set aside in a separate bag, were kept as treasured remnants of a past filled with both pain and tender memories. Later, as the clock ticked past 8, Ethan sensed their growing hunger. He suggested a visit to a quaint Italian restaurant just minutes away, a family-owned haven with red and white checkered tablecloths and the irresistible aroma of tomato sauce and fresh basil. At the restaurant, the hostess led them to a cozy corner table and provided booster seats for the twins. An elderly waiter soon arrived with menus and even offered small coloring sets for the children, a gesture that warmed Ethan's already heavy heart. "Do you like pasta?" he asked, knowing well from their eager expressions that the answer was yes. He ordered spaghetti and meatballs for all three, grape juice for the twins, and water for himself. As they waited for the meal, the twins sat quietly, their hands still intertwined, coloring in the provided sheets. When a basket of fresh bread and butter was brought over, Ethan gently encouraged them to take what they needed. Their hungry eyes and tentative smiles spoke of the long months without a proper meal. When the main course arrived, the familiar aroma of homemade pasta filled the air, and in that moment, Lila broke the silence. "Mommy used to make pasta like this," she whispered, her voice small but clear. Mira nodded in agreement, her eyes fixed on her plate as if trying to capture a piece of that long-lost comfort. Ethan listened intently as the twins recounted memories of their mother, Alina, a talented seamstress who had transformed scraps of fabric into beautiful dresses and filled their small home with bedtime stories and laughter. The tender recollections, though mixed with sorrow, revealed a deep strength in the girls. "You're both very brave," Ethan said softly when they paused, his words laden with empathy. The twins met his gaze with tear-filled eyes, and for a moment, the bustling restaurant fell away, leaving only the echo of shared memories and silent promises. As they finished their meal, the twins' faces lit up with the joy of rediscovered comfort. and Ethan silently vowed to honor Elena's memory by ensuring that these two little souls would always have a chance to be children, to laugh, to dream, and to grow in an environment filled with love and safety. Ethan watched the rain trace delicate patterns on the window as he sat in Anderson's office, the low hum of the air conditioning and rustling paperwork a quiet counterpoint to the storm raging in his heart. His gaze drifted to the envelope he had just pulled from the inside pocket of his jacket. The envelope, worn at the edges but still intact, represented a slender thread of hope. A possibility for redemption. "I already drank before," Dean admitted with a shaky voice, his injured hand moving slowly over his face as if to soothe the pain. His words were halting, laden with regret. "Elena? She tried to help me. She wanted me to get treatment, but I never—" His sentence trailed off into a heavy silence. Ethan's eyes narrowed, and he said softly, "It's not too late, Dean." His tone was both gentle and firm, a subtle challenge. "What are you talking about? I have contacts at a rehabilitation center, a good place. They have a spot for you, starting today." A bitter laugh escaped Dean's cracked lips. "And why would you do that? Why do you care?" he challenged, his voice echoing with the weight of lost opportunities. Ethan replied with quiet conviction, "Because those girls deserve to know that the man their mother chose isn't a total lost cause. You're strong enough to try changing, even if it's late." His words hung in the air, fragile yet resolute. Dean glanced at his trembling hands. Dried blood had etched dark patterns into his skin, and hesitantly asked, Did they ask about me?" Ethan paused, considering whether to soften the truth, but ultimately opted for honesty. "No, they're too scared right now," he said. The admission broke Dean, and tears, unbidden, began to flow. "I hurt them so much," Dean whispered, his voice barely audible. "Elena would never forgive me," Ethan replied quietly. "Maybe not, but you can still do the right thing now." His words, measured and calm, resonated in the stillness of the room. In the quiet aftermath, Dean, now more sober yet still trembling, began signing document after document under the meticulous guidance of Margot, the dedicated social worker. Ethan stood by the window, lost in thought, watching as the pages of Dean's future were inscribed with reluctant consent. Margot explained each form with clinical patience: the voluntary relinquishment of custody, the rehabilitation consent form, and the no-contact agreement, all symbols of a new beginning. Ethan's mind then wandered to the abandoned park visible through the window. In the clear light of day, he could see not only decay but also potential. His architect's eye began to envision possibilities where others might only see rubble. At that moment, Jade, his ever-reliable assistant, entered quietly, a fresh cup of coffee in hand. "You're already planning something, aren't you?" she asked softly, following his gaze. Ethan returned a slight smile. "Yes," he replied. "I need you to look up a few things for me. The park's history, property records, zoning regulations." Jade nodded, handing him a folder. "I figured you'd want this." Ethan skimmed through the documents with growing interest. The park had once been a vibrant part of the community before bankruptcy and neglect had left it in legal limbo, a limbo that now presented an opportunity. The sound of a chair scraping across the floor signaled that Dean had finished signing the paperwork. He now stood, appearing both older and strangely younger, as though a heavy burden had been momentarily lifted. Margot quietly informed Ethan, "There's a van waiting downstairs. They'll take you straight to the rehab center." Dean, with a nod of resigned acceptance, then turned to Ethan. "That photo album you mentioned, the one with pictures of Elena and the girls," he said in a small voice. Ethan leaned forward. "I'll find it," he promised firmly. "I'll make sure they have it." A soft "thank you" escaped Dean's lips, followed by a barely audible, "Then take care of them." After Dean and Margot departed, Ethan turned his full attention to the documents Jade had provided. He sat at his desk and began typing rapidly on his computer, his fingers dancing over the keyboard as he researched, took notes, and drafted ideas. Over the next few weeks, his life became a whirlwind of activity. Ethan juggled the legal processes related to the twins with an ambitious new project: the transformation of the abandoned park into the Sunflower Community Center. His preliminary plans promised a metamorphosis from decay to renewal, a space where hope would replace despair. Blueprints and sketches soon plastered the walls of his office, with the old Ferris wheel destined to be restored as the centerpiece, a symbol of transformation and new beginnings. New spaces for educational programs, art studios, community gardens, and safe recreational zones were envisioned around the restored relic. In a meeting later that day, Jade reported, "Investors are interested, especially after hearing about the social component of the project." Ethan nodded, reviewing financials on his screen. Although the project was expensive, his reputation and connections made it feasible. Meanwhile, at home, the changes in the twins were equally remarkable. With combined efforts from Ethan and his supportive mother Helen, the twins began to open up. Leela spent hours in her newly set-up art corner, while Mira fell in love with the garden, eagerly learning about flowers from Helen. The legal process progressed steadily, and Margot observed with satisfaction, "They're flourishing. It's remarkable to see the difference." Yet, even amidst progress, the scars of the past remained. The twins sometimes experienced nightmares and moments of fear, their memories surfacing unexpectedly. One afternoon, Ethan peered through his home office window and saw Lila and Mira helping Helen plant a new row of sunflowers. "They'll grow all the way to the sky," Lila exclaimed, her small hands carefully covering the seeds with soil. Mira, pointing at the project drawings Ethan had shown them, added, "Even taller." Helen smiled warmly at her granddaughters, and Ethan felt his heart swell with gratitude. On his desk lay the Sunflower Community Center plans, a vision of a future where other children might find hope. And beside it, a recent photo of the twins, a treasured photo album recovered from the park, resting among his documents. Outside, laughter filled the garden as the twins chased a butterfly, their hair shimmering in the soft afternoon sun. It was hard to believe these were the same frightened children he had found on that rainy sidewalk. Suddenly, Lila called out, "Come see, our sunflowers are sprouting already." Ethan set aside his work, rising from his desk to join them. In that moment, as he looked at the blooming garden and the vibrant faces of the twins, he was reminded that life could flourish, even in the unlikeliest of places. Ethan sat in his spacious office overlooking the bustling cityscape, his tired face illuminated by the soft glow of his laptop screen. The events of the previous day, filled with demanding presentations, pivotal investor meetings, and the relentless pursuit of his eco-friendly housing project, still weighed heavily on his mind. His thoughts, however, were now diverted to a matter of far greater personal significance. After leaving the underground parking garage of his modern high-rise at exactly, Ethan had driven through streets awash with the golden hues of autumn. Amid the usual urban rush, executives talking rapidly on their phones, students burdened by heavy backpacks, and street vendors arranging their wares, two small figures had captured his attention. On a crowded sidewalk, he noticed twin girls no older than 5, standing like fragile statues in a sea of motion. Their blue dresses, though showing signs of wear, were neatly maintained, with tiny patches of mended fabric that spoke of careful love. Their brown hair, styled into matching ponytails with faded blue ribbons, swayed gently in the breeze. But it was not merely their appearance, it was the deep, searching look in their large, dark eyes, a mixture of fear and a silent plea that stopped Ethan in his tracks. The twins raised their little arms in perfect unison, pointing toward a distant, crumbling structure. Ethan followed their gaze and saw the fading silhouette of an old Ferris wheel, a relic of an abandoned amusement park, its rusty frame standing as a poignant reminder of forgotten joy. The sight stirred memories of his own childhood, waiting alone at the school gate, his mother Helen, who juggled multiple jobs to ensure he could study, never failing to return. It was in that moment that Ethan's instincts, honed over years of business acumen and tempered by personal loss, compelled him to act. Ignoring the impatient honking of passing cars, he signaled to pull over and parked a few yards away. With his heart pounding, Ethan stepped out into the cool evening air, a mixture of distant honks, fragmented conversations, and the occasional squeak of a bus providing an urban symphony. "Hello?" he called softly, careful not to startle the twins. "Are you okay? Are you waiting for someone?" In perfect unison, the girls turned their gaze toward him, their deep brown eyes filled with an indescribable sorrow and hope. Instead of answering, they resumed pointing toward the abandoned park, their silent message echoing in his heart. A sudden gust of wind lifted the hem of their blue dresses, revealing bruised knees adorned with colorful band-aids, a poignant reminder of the physical and emotional trials they had endured. Ethan crouched down to their level, his voice gentle yet laden with urgency. "My name is Ethan. Can I help you find your parents?" Caused the twin on the right, marked by a delicate star-shaped patch on her dress pocket, to tighten her grip on her sister's hand, and tears began to well in both their eyes. As the sun began to set and the first city lights flickered on, Ethan noticed that the twins were shivering in their thin dresses. Moved by a surge of compassion, he removed his own jacket and draped it over them. The gesture, simple yet profound, was accepted silently as they huddled together for warmth. Though pedestrians passed by with fleeting glances, none stopped to offer help, as if the city had encased itself in a bubble of indifference. In the distance, the abandoned Ferris wheel loomed, a twisted relic against the darkening sky, its skeletal structure reaching toward the emerging stars. Driven by a deep-seated need to act, Ethan asked, "Do you want to show me something over there?" as he pointed toward the park. For the first time, a glimmer of relief mixed with trepidation shone in the twins' eyes, and silent tears began to fall. In that critical moment, his heart echoed the memory of his own vulnerable childhood, and he resolved to trust his instincts. "All right," he whispered, "let's go see what you want to show me." Instantly, the twins' faces broke into identical, hopeful smiles, as though they had finally found someone who truly cared. With the rain softly beginning to fall and city lights reflecting off puddles like scattered jewels, Ethan led them toward the entrance of the dilapidated amusement park. They passed a funhouse hall of mirrors, its shattered glass scattered across the floor like dirty diamonds. And soon a towering roller coaster loomed ahead, its twisted tracks carving impossible loops against the darkening sky like a slumbering metal serpent. Venturing deeper into the park, Ethan noticed the first signs of recent habitation, an old shooting gallery booth with a faded awning partially intact, repurposed as a makeshift shelter. Ethan stopped at the booth, his heart constricting as he asked, "Is this where you live?" The twins nodded silently, their eyes heavy with unspoken stories. Approaching the booth, Ethan observed small details that painted a poignant picture. Old blankets neatly folded in a corner, a line of clothes hanging from makeshift lines, and empty food wrappers carefully stacked. There were also darker signs, scattered empty liquor bottles, some broken, and marks on the wooden walls that spoke of anger and despair. Yet amid this chaos, there were traces of the twins' gentle touch. A makeshift vase holding wilted wildflowers, childish drawings taped to the wall with worn-out tape, and a tattered rag doll carefully placed on a wooden crate. Suddenly, a harsh voice erupted, shattering the silence like a clap of thunder. "You two, in here! Where's my money?" The effect was immediate and devastating. The twins began shaking violently and pressed closer to Ethan as if he were a shield. For the first time since he had found them, one of the girls let out a small, heartbreaking whimper that broke his heart into 1,000 pieces. The sound of unsteady footsteps and the clinking of empty bottles filled the air, accompanied by mumbled curses dripping with drunken anger. "Where did you run off to, you worthless brats? I told you not to come back without any money." The voice drew nearer, seething with fury. Suddenly, a disheveled figure, Dean, staggered between two old booths. His bloodshot eyes, aggressive posture, and dirty rumpled clothes made him appear larger than his medium stature suggested. In a brief moment of confusion, his gaze swept over Ethan before landing on the twins partially hidden behind him, and his expression contorted into a mask of pure rage. "Who are you?" he growled, advancing unsteadily. "And what are you doing with my girls?" Before Ethan could respond, Dean's focus shifted, and he shouted at the twins, "You! I told you to get money! Where is it?" In a swift, cruel motion, he grabbed the arm of the girl on the right, the one marked with the star, and yanked her violently. "Answer me when I talk to you!" Tears streamed down Ethan's face as he watched the tiny girl being shaken like a rag doll, her sister clinging desperately to her free hand. "You're as useless as your mother," Dean spat, his face red with anger. "She died and left me with you, and you can't even bring in money." In that harrowing moment, all the memories of Ethan's own childhood, the sacrifices of his mother, the love she had poured into him, collided with the cruelty unfolding before his eyes. With a surge of unyielding determination, his voice dropped low yet resonant with authority. "Let her go. Now." Though tears still streamed down his cheeks, his eyes burned with resolve as he confronted Dean. "Who do you think you are to order me around?" Dean, still clutching the trembling girl, advanced a few unsteady steps before Ethan interjected firmly. "You can let her go right now, or I will call the police, social services, and every authority available." Pulling out his phone, Ethan maintained unwavering eye contact. Something in his determined tone cut through Dean's drunken haze, and slowly, the man released his grip. The girl immediately ran into Ethan's waiting arms, joining her sister. Dean mumbled bitterly, "They've got no one else." But Ethan replied, "You're not all they have, not anymore." In one swift, protective motion, he scooped up both girls, their small bodies trembling yet seemingly weightless, a testament to the power of survival. As Ethan led them out of the desolate park, the rain pounded steadily, mingling with the twins' silent tears of fear and newfound hope. He whispered softly to them, "You'll never have to come back here, I promise." Their embrace tightened around him, a silent testament of trust and relief. Behind them, the abandoned park stood like a scar on the urban landscape, its rusted structures bearing witness to countless tales of sorrow. But for these two little souls in the arms of a stranger who had chosen compassion over indifference, that night marked the beginning of a new journey. A journey towards safety, love, and the promise of a better future. Ethan sat in his spacious office, overlooking a city that pulsed with life, yet his thoughts were far from the bustling streets below. The soft glow of his laptop screen revealed his tired face, etched with lines of worry and determination. He hadn't slept much, his mind ceaselessly replaying the events of the previous day and the monumental decision he was about to make. His first search had been on children's rights, a topic that now dominated his thoughts. Articles, laws, and detailed legal procedures filled the screen, each piece of information raising even more questions about how best to protect the two fragile souls who had so unexpectedly entered his life. At that moment, his assistant Jade entered with a steaming cup of coffee, pausing in surprise at his early start. "I need you to cancel my morning meetings," Ethan instructed without diverting his eyes from the screen, "and please schedule an appointment with Dr. Anderson, our corporate attorney, as soon as possible." Jade, having worked with him long enough to sense when something crucial was unfolding, nodded silently and quickly set about her tasks. By 9 o'clock, his phone rang. It was his mother, Helen. Her voice was calm yet laden with emotion as she explained, "The girls just finished breakfast. Lila helped make pancakes." Mira is still very quiet, but her eyes lit up when I showed her my garden. Ethan smiled, recalling the twins' reverence for the sunflowers that their mother had adored. "How did they sleep, Mom?" he asked. "Together, of course," she replied. "Even though we have 2 bedrooms ready for them, they wouldn't separate. They held hands, and, son, they had nightmares during the night. They cried, calling for their mother." Ethan closed his eyes, his heart aching in sympathy. "I figured that might happen," he murmured. "What are you planning to do?" his mother pressed gently, a question Ethan had been asking himself since that fateful evening. His research had revealed a complex web of legal and emotional challenges. Without a legal connection to the girls, his options were painfully limited. "I'm not sure yet, Mom, but I can't just ignore this," he replied. Helen's voice, filled with the wisdom of years spent helping struggling families, reassured him. "You've always had a heart bigger than the world, even when it was just us who needed help. I've helped several families over the years, and sometimes even the impossible can be overcome with love and determination." Ethan jotted down notes in his beloved black hardcover notebook, the one he used for his most significant projects. He pondered Helen's words about understanding their legal situation. Was Dean ever legally married to their mother? Did he have any documents for the girls? He knew he needed every detail to know what he was up against. His mother continued, "We need to think about their immediate well-being too. Trauma doesn't wait for bureaucracy. They need to feel safe, loved, and protected." She told him about drawing in the garden. She had given them paper and colored pencils, and Lila's natural talent shone through even then, while Mira marveled at the butterflies that visited the garden. Ethan's eyes grew misty as he listened. It was hard to believe these were the same scared girls he had found on the rainy sidewalk just a day earlier. After a moment of silence, he dared to ask, "Mom, what if I tried to get custody of them?" The silence on the other end stretched like an eternity before Helen spoke. "Are you sure, son? That's a huge responsibility." "I'm not sure of anything, Mom. I just know I can't leave them behind." There was a sigh on the line, but Ethan could hear a gentle smile in her voice. "Then let's do this right. I'll call Margot." Margot was a social worker Helen had met years ago at the Department of Social Services, a trusted friend who had helped many families in distress. "She's in a higher position now, she can guide us on the first steps," Helen added. With that comforting thought, Ethan returned his focus to the computer. He opened his architectural design program and began to work on a new project, renovating his apartment to accommodate 2 young residents. The following hours passed in a whirlwind. Dr. Anderson arrived around 11 a.m. with a folder of documents on custody rights and legal procedures, while Jade moved about, supplying more coffee and organizing the increasing number of papers. Near noon, Ethan received a text from Helen with a photo of Lila and Mira in the garden, each holding a small pot with newly planted sunflower seeds that she had helped them sow. Their expressions, though not full smiles, held a softness that had not been there the day before. Looking at that photo, Ethan became absolutely certain of his decision. The scattered documents on his desk testified to the complexity of the path ahead, legal obstacles, bureaucratic hurdles, and emotional challenges. But he knew it would be worth every step. He gathered his papers into a folder, closed his laptop, and grabbed his keys. In the elevator on his way to the parking lot, he mentally listed the necessities: new beds, school supplies, maybe even a larger home with a yard where the girls could plant their own flowers. Then another text arrived from Helen. Lila had directly asked if he was coming back for lunch, a first direct question that warmed his heart. Ethan smiled as he got into his car. He understood that the road ahead would be long and complicated, but every small step, every timid smile and whispered word would be a victory. As he drove toward his mother's house, Ethan thought of Elena, the girl's mother. Wherever she was, he hoped she could see that her daughters had found people willing to carry on her legacy of love. Bathed in the golden light of a sunlit midday, Ethan silently promised that her daughters would flourish, just as the sunflowers she had so cherished. Morning still clung to the air as Ethan parked near the old amusement park, its metal structures glistening with dew, lending the place an almost ethereal quality. In his back seat lay a brown leather folder, carefully organized with the results of a long night of work with Margot. His plan was simple. Enter, retrieve the girls' precious belongings, a photo album their mother had made and hidden away, and leave. But then, the sound of breaking glass cut through the silence. Ethan hurried his steps, heart pounding as he reached the old shelter booth. There, his blood ran cold. Dean, in a state of drunken rage, was systematically destroying the place, shouting and kicking a pile of blankets. Shards of glass lay scattered on the floor, mingled with remnants of broken bottles and pieces of a shattered mirror. Dean's bleeding hand was a stark reminder of his inner torment. Ethan stood at the booth's entrance, his calm presence a stark contrast to the chaos. "They're safe, Dean," he declared firmly. Startled, Dean spun around, his bloodshot eyes locking onto Ethan. "You took them from me, you had no right," he roared. Ethan maintained his composure, his voice hardened by years of determination. "What right did you have to force 2 children to beg and live like this?" he demanded, his eyes scanning the wreckage. Childish drawings, a rag doll, and tiny clothes neatly folded on a crate, all tokens of the girls' resilient lives. Dean staggered forward, his voice a jumble of anger and despair. "You know nothing. You weren't there when Alina died, when everything fell apart." Ethan stepped closer, his tone controlled yet filled with empathy. "No, I wasn't there," he admitted softly. "But I know Lila and Mira. I know the fear in their eyes at every sound, every step," he continued. "That's not the legacy a mother leaves for her children." For a long, heavy moment, silence reigned, punctuated only by the distant drip of water. Finally, Dean whispered, "I tried. I really did try. But after she was gone, it was like seeing her twice every day." Ethan nodded silently, recalling the photos where the twins had inherited their mother's large, expressive eyes. "So you started," Ethan began, but Dean's voice faltered as he tried to explain. Ethan stood on the small stage at Aurora Square, his heart pounding with a mixture of relief and overwhelming gratitude. In the soft glow of the morning sun, the newly renovated community center buzzed with quiet excitement. Behind him, the restored Ferris wheel, a symbol of transformation, gleamed brightly, its cheerful colors reflecting the hope that now filled the space. On either side of him stood the twin girls Lila and Mira, their delicate hands still intertwined, and at his side Margot, radiant in a seafoam green dress that echoed the gentle beauty of her late sister. Helen, ever the pillar of maternal strength, watched from behind with eyes glistening with quiet pride. In that moment, the twins' expressions had transformed completely. Gone were the shadows of fear and the anxious glances of a recent past marred by hardship. Instead, their faces now shone with pure, unadulterated love, a love that multiplied with every shared smile. "Did you see the sunflowers?" Lila asked, her voice bubbling with excitement as she ran toward Ethan. "They're even taller today!" Mira chimed in softly, her tone full of wonder. Their innocent exclamations filled the air with the promise of a brighter future. "Mommy always said flowers grow more on happy days," Ethan said as he knelt to their level, his voice tender and overflowing with emotion. "You both look absolutely beautiful today. Your mom would be so proud of you." Lila twirled around, her dress swirling gracefully as she added, "Aunt Margot made our dresses using Mommy's old sewing machine," while Mira gently caressed the embroidered sunflowers on her dress. Their words echoed with memories of a time when their mother's gentle hands had transformed ordinary fabric into garments of love and care. The opening ceremony began with heartfelt speeches by the mayor and representatives from local partner organizations, all extolling the virtues of urban renewal and social transformation. But the most significant moment was yet to come. With a deep, clear voice, Ethan stepped forward again, taking one twin on each side. Behind him, Margot and Helen stood as living testaments to the strength of family bonds. "This center," he declared, "was born from an unexpected encounter on a rainy sidewalk, a night that changed many lives forever. Two little girls once pointed to this very place, silently asking for help." He paused, feeling Lila's and Mira's small hands tighten around his, and continued, "But this isn't merely a rescue story. It is a testament to how love can bloom in the most unlikely places, how families can form in ways we never imagined, and how sometimes we must lose everything to discover something far more precious." Turning to Margot, Ethan announced, "Today, I want to share that this center will be more than just a community space. It will be a symbol of how different kinds of love can coexist and strengthen one another." A murmur of surprise rippled through the gathered crowd as Ethan explained that Margot, Elena's sister and the girls' devoted aunt, would assume primary custody of Lila and Mira. "But," he added with firm resolve, "through a special shared custody arrangement, I will remain in the girls' lives as their guardian and protector. This center, which we shall call Harmonia, will be our common ground, a place where different families, however formed, can grow together." Margot then took the microphone, her eyes glistening with tears in the gentle light of the new day. "And that's why I'd like to make a special request," she said, her voice trembling with emotion as she turned to Ethan. "I'd like to ask you to be the girls' official godfather, not just on paper, but in their hearts, the way you already are." In that instant, the twins released Ethan's hands and ran into Margot's waiting embrace, then returned to him, forming a living bridge between the two adults who loved them so deeply. "Family," Margot continued, her voice barely above a whisper, yet filled with conviction, "is not defined solely by blood. My dear sister Elena always believed that true love is like a sunflower. It finds the light even on the darkest days and grows toward it." Ethan looked out at the emotional crowd, Helen silently weeping, faces lit with hope, and concluded, "This center will bear Elena's name, not only as a tribute, but as a promise that there will always be room for more love, more understanding, and endless possibilities. Even in the most improbable places, there will always be hope." The ceremony flowed with formal ribbon cutting, guided tours of the modern facilities, and countless photographs capturing each heartfelt moment. Yet, the most meaningful part came later, when the guests had long departed. In the serene twilight of the sunflower garden, Ethan, Margot, Helen, and the twins gathered together. Lila proudly displayed a special drawing, a family portrait created just for the occasion, while Mira carefully distributed small pots filled with freshly sprouted sunflower seedlings for everyone to take home. "You know what Mommy always said about sunflowers?" Lila asked excitedly as she handed out the tiny pots. "They're like a family. No matter where they grow, they always turn toward the same light." Margot softly added, "That's exactly right, sweetie." Ethan looked around at this unconventional family, a family built not just by blood but by shared memories, unconditional love, and the strength to forgive, and felt his heart overflow with gratitude. The late afternoon sun drenched the garden in a golden glow, making the sunflowers shine like tiny suns. Somewhere in his heart, Ethan liked to believe that Alina was smiling down, knowing that her daughters had not only found safety, but had grown in love beyond measure. That once fateful encounter on the rainy sidewalk had become so much more than a rescue. It had been a catalyst for rediscovering the true meaning of family. It taught them all that love does not divide, it multiplies. Life's greatest gifts often come disguised as challenges, and in that sunflower garden, surrounded by the intertwining threads of different kinds of love, Ethan finally understood that there is no single path to happiness, no one shape of family, and no singular way to love. Like the cherished sunflowers that had always captured Elena's heart, love finds its own way to the light. It may win through difficult paths or bloom in the most unlikely of places, but it always inevitably reaches toward the warmth and hope of a new dawn.